Hi, welcome. I'm Katie Smith. I'm the editor of Columbus CEO Magazine. Thank you so much for joining us today for Diverse Leaders in Law. I would like to thank our guests and our guest moderator today. We've got Kate McGarvey from the Ohio Legal Services Association. We have Michael Battle, a partner and pro bono chair at Barnes and Thornburg. Yaz Ashrawi, a member at Frost Brown Todd. Janay Stevens, a partner at Vorys, Seymour, and Pease, and Diane Menashe, a partner and director of litigation training and pro bono activities at Ice Miller. Many thanks to our sponsors, Frost Brown Todd and Barnes and Thornburg. And I would like to introduce Noel Shepard of Frost Brown Todd, who will say a few words.
Thank you, Katie. For those of you who have participated in this before, thank you. We really are honored to be part of this program and one of the sponsors. If you participated before, you'll know that I tend not to give an elevator speech about Frost Brown Todd, but try to give you a little bit of information of what we're doing in the DEI area, just to give others ideas. So since our last discussion in January, we've adopted a transgender policy, and we're proud of that as far as progress in the legal world. And we've also hired a new chief diversity officer. If you know, Kim Amrine was here for more than 20 years as a partner and then a full-time DEI director. She's now opened her own consulting business, but our new director or chief diversity officer is Chris Johnson out of one of our Kentucky offices. So we're excited for him to be here and to come up with new ideas for the future. So thanks again for participating. Back to you, Katie.
Thank you so much for your partnership in this program, Noel. I'd like to introduce Kate McGarvey, the Executive Director of the Ohio State Legal Services Association, who is today's moderator, and she will take it away. Thank you so much, Kate, for bringing us How to Fight Racism Pro Bono.
Well, thank you, Katie, and thank you, Noel, for having us. At Ohio Legal Services Association, we provide civil legal services to low-income individuals in 36 counties across Ohio. We do this with our staff as well as with pro bono volunteers and partners. And we know that Black, Indigenous, and people of color represent a disproportionate number of those living and working in poverty. And that with that comes the inability to pay for critical legal services. Many law firms, including those represented on the panel, have recognized the opportunity to use their legal skills to amplify the voices of those oppressed by racism, to use the law as a vehicle for change that impacts communities of color, and to promote racial equity. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to spend the next hour talking with them about some of the efforts that they are undertaking. As we started preparing for this panel, however, we thought that it was important to start with the recognition that in order to really externally use pro bono work to fight racism, that we also need to make sure that we are looking internally to ensure that our systems and structures at the organizations and firms that we work for are also focused on racism. So I appreciate Noel's introduction in terms of what are some of those pieces, and we'll follow up a little bit on that trend to get us started. So to kick it off, I'm going to turn it over to Michael and ask that he start us off by talking about diversity, equity, inclusion work at Barnes & Noble around fighting racism.
Thanks, Kate. Are you folks able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I know I have microphone problems sometimes. Good afternoon, everyone. And again, Kate, thanks so much. And thanks for the invitation to join this afternoon. And Kate, just what you said is a great segue and a little bit about what I want to tell you about what we do at Barnes and Thornburg, not Barnes and Noble. So, we get that often. But we have a lot of initiatives going on at Barnes and Thornburg, and we have a very ambitious program, but it's also very robust. The chair of diversity, equity, and inclusion is a full-time practicing partner in our firm, and huge dedication. She has a staff that works with her. She's been in that position for about 6 years. And so we've built a lot out of that initiative. Even though we were doing things before that, we've done quite a bit in the past 6 years. And there are a number of things we're doing. If I talked about all of them, I'd take up the whole hour. So I'm not going to do that. I'm sure I'll get a chance to talk about bits and pieces of them this afternoon. But more recently, I'll just talk about 2 or 3 things that we've done. But one of the things we talked about during the call last week was during Black History Month 2021, we did a seminar to provide a look inside Barnes and Thornburg's practice groups for Black-owned businesses. And we registered over 200 people who registered to come to the program that lasted for 3 hours, which was somewhat ambitious, but everybody stayed on. And we introduced the registrants to just about all of our practice groups. And the only thing we ran out of was time. So after that, what we did was we did a survey with the folks who attended, and we got back responses that requested that we do it again, and that they actually cited 18 areas of practice that they wanted to hear about. So we did it one more time in August of 2021, and then the next one is coming up in May 17th, I believe, of 2022. In addition to that, we created a racial justice committee. And getting back to what you said earlier, Kate, we have an external component to that and an internal component to that. And the committees are staffed and populated by attorneys and staff inside the firm. And internally, as you suggested, we take a deep look, a deep dive into how we're doing. How are we doing in terms of recruiting, hiring, retention, and promoting? And they meet fairly regularly to talk about these things. The external component of it also takes a look outwardly. How can we be better friends and neighbors in our community? How can we do things to help our community? The third component of that, we created a foundation where we've raised, going into the third year now, $250,000 internally at the firm. And what we do is we give $50,000 each to 5 offices, with the charge of going out and finding an organization that has a great need that meets with the mission of what we're trying to accomplish. And the caveat is that any organization that we partner with in that regard cannot be connected to the firm, cannot be a client of the firm. None of anybody that works in the firm can be a board member or associated with it. We really drill down deep to find organizations that have a great need. And this past year, the DC office was one of the recipients of that. And I can tell you that the due diligence that we did to find that organization was very fruitful. And we now have a relationship with them, and they have a lot of other things that we're going forward with, further opportunities to work with them. So we're really proud of that. And we're in the third year of doing that. I hope I didn't take too much time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate that. I'm going to turn it over to Janay to talk a little bit about Vorys, and also I know some of the increasing internal diversity. I think there was some recent certification as well at Vorys based on some of that work.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're probably referring to our Mansfield certification and or the YLEF certification. Those are 2 external kind of programs that Vorys has partnered with that force us to take a look at some of that systemic things that I think we'll talk about maybe throughout the day today, and require us to have a checks and balances on who we're hiring, who we're bringing in for interviews, who we're promoting. But 2 of the things that I wanted to highlight, as I imagine many of the firms on this call are doing a lot of similar things to fight racism, so to speak, internally. 2 that I personally am really passionate about, that I've seen the firm get really engaged in lately. About 3 or 4 years ago, we started a partnership with the affinity bars at all of the law schools to bring in law students to help them with their resume writing, cover letter drafting, and doing mock interviews. And what I think, from why I view that as an internal program, is to see the collection of folks internally who have participated in that, and also the number of students that are recruited from that program to then join the firm as summer associates and full-time associates going forward. So I think that has been a really, really positive internal effort that the firm has taken to kind of boost its pipeline of diverse law students in particular. The second one is actually for the lawyers who are working at the firm currently, including our summer associates. Last year, we were able to do what we call dine-arounds, and we matched all of our diverse lawyers up in small groups with firm leadership to go around town, have dinner, particularly in the COVID times. We weren't all seeing each other as often as maybe some would like, and to get everyone out and just interacting on a patio, have dinner, have lunch. And that's something that's going to be ongoing. And I think when we're talking about how to progress particularly people of color in law firms. It's relationships, and it's having folks that sit in high places of the firm to really invest in those lawyers as they would any other lawyer. And so I think that's a really great first step in making those connections.
Thanks, Janay. Yes, I want to pass it over to you to maybe follow up on that a little bit as well. I know you've also done some work in terms of building the diversity pipeline within the legal profession and starting that early.
Yes, thank you, Kate, and hello to everyone, and thanks for attending and thanks for hosting us. Yeah, Janay hit on something that I could easily piggyback on, and that's the internal pipeline. And you know, that brought, well, I'm sure many law firms do this, but it starts early, and it's important to start early. And one of the initiatives that I have participated in, our Columbus office participates in annually, is the Law and Leadership Institute. And through that institute and through that program, we host annually, although COVID has obviously put a damper on that, a student or multiple students, high school students that are passionate about the law and are looking to go forward and pursue those aspirations. They get to spend a week with us. They shadow various attorneys. They attend various events, various observation opportunities, both substantive and sort of event networking type opportunities. And at the end of that week, they present to the office, to staff and attorneys, of what they learned, the projects they did, the attorneys they worked with, and the sort of the highs and of their visit. And that's really important. And it's a couple of years ago, as I mentioned to the panel when we first met, we had an opportunity to see a student that went through this LLI program and visit us, graduate from law school, and just seeing that progression and seeing that pipeline into the legal profession of underserved and underrepresented populations is very fulfilling, and it's great to be a part of it. I think the other thing, and Janay touched on this a little bit as well, the other thing that this program allows is tremendous participation with the existing lawyers and staff in the office. This is a program where the students are not assigned to any particular attorney, are not dealing with any particular group of attorneys, but they're in the office. They're a part of the team, they're part of the firm, part of the organization for that week, and they get to really see what it's like to be a lawyer and interact with anyone and everyone, internally and externally. And so having that participation from the firm's perspective and seeing the development and the beginning of that pipeline from the student's perspective is fantastic. And then obviously we see that transition through our recruiting efforts, and then through our hiring efforts, and most importantly, or something that doesn't get talked about a lot, is the retention efforts, and having that atmosphere and having the culture in the firm and having these types of programs, and the number of attorneys and staff involved in these programs really helps with that latter aspect, and that's the retention. So.
Yeah, thank you for raising the retention issue as well. Diane, I want to pass it to you to talk about ICE Miller, and then also really to pivot us to start to talk about pro bono efforts and how you have made sure that much of your pro bono efforts have been focused on fighting racism.
Hey, thanks for having me, Diane Menashe. Nice to be here. I came to ICE Miller at the last day of 2019, and since I've been here, we really made a concerted effort to include criminal work within our pro bono program. I say criminal work because it really involves, we partnered with Georgetown University to do wrongful conviction work with Mark Howard there. We currently have 3 cases with them. We partner with the State Public Defender's Office and their wrongful conviction unit to do wrongful conviction cases with them. We formed a judicial release coalition with 5 other of our partner law firms in the city to write and litigate early release motions for persons of color who are incarcerated and legally eligible for early release. Those are just a few examples of things that we've really worked on within our pro bono program with intention, because I think when we talk about racism, of course, we often, because we're at big firms, talk about, Black entrepreneurs, persons of color, how can we help in the transactional space? And I know that, one of our weaknesses, if you will, is firms, is that we don't have in-house criminal defense attorneys. Most of our firms, of course, have white collar lawyers, but really that criminal defense perspective isn't something that we staff largely. And I also think, Kate, it's something that firms haven't historically really embraced, because they're harder conversations to have, right? When we talk about helping persons of color that are incarcerated, inevitably people hear the incarcerated part and don't really understand either the law that they're eligible for release, and also don't understand that when we talk about systemic racism, that persons of color are disproportionately incarcerated within our state and also within our country. So there are lots of different ways that we need to really think about how do we impact and affect systemic racism. Given just what I've done for a career, I'm particularly passionate about all the work that can, and I hope will continue to be done in the criminal space on the pro bono side. But there's certainly a lot of work that we're doing here at Ice Miller in that space. I also just want to say, we can think broadly in this space, right? Like if attorneys don't want to do litigation in the courtroom, or don't want to have that direct client piece, if you will, in the criminal defense space, there's also an incredible amount of work that can be done with data collection and coding. For instance, we have partnered with 2 professors at Michigan State University Law School, and we are looking at the impact of race on the administration of the death penalty in Cuyahoga County. As some of you might know, Cuyahoga County is one of the top 5 counties in the country in terms of imposition and convictions in capital punishment. And they are not in one of the top 5 cities in the country in terms of rates of murder. So what's going on there? And this has been since 1990. And also kind of interesting in Cuyahoga is it's not a political issue, because actually the prosecutor in Cuyahoga has historically been a Democrat. So what is at play there? We undertook a data collection and coding analysis. We had 88 individuals in the firm participate in the coding. That includes staff and attorneys. And then ultimately, after we had aggregated all of that data, which was a vast amount of work, we handed it over to the professors, and they're near the tail end of their analysis and hope to write a law review article. And I mention that as just an effort or a way to think about how we as firms can have impact. Maybe if we don't want to have impact in the criminal space and direct litigation, there's other ways, right? Like we need to look at systemically how are systems failing, if they're failing, and why. So I just mentioned the data collection and coding as an opportunity and an option, because it's been also something within our firm. I know we talked about retention a second ago. The individuals in our firm absolutely embrace and love when we've done these data collection and coding projects. They can't believe that the firm is embracing this type of work. You know, we're talking about capital punishment. We're talking about capital punishment and the correlation it might have with race. I think it has been really overwhelmingly well supported within our firm that we're able to have that conversation, and then we're able to support the work at that level.
And Diane, one thing when we spoke last that really struck with me is when you were describing the different pro bono programs, you talked about being explicit that these pro bono programs are focused on helping people of color, and that is an explicit intention of that work. And could you talk a little bit more about that? How that's been set up within the firm?
For sure. I think that, if we talk about addressing racism and systemically, how do we fix and figure out what's broken, we have to, with intention, create pro bono programming that is directed at persons of color. I think if we're not creating programs with intention in that way, then we're apt to really not address the issues. So to this point, with respect to the data collection work in Cuyahoga, it's specifically what impact, if any, is race playing in that. I will tell you that the Judicial Release Coalition that we started and partnered with firms in Columbus, we have specifically only done motions for early release for persons of color. I know that our firm has also partnered with the State Public Defender's Office and filed parole applications for those juvenile life offenders that became eligible for parole under SB 256. And again, when we partnered with the State Public Defender's Office, I transparently said that we wanted to represent those on a pro bono basis that were persons of color. I think we just need to be transparent about this, and really the intentionality, I think, will not only get more done, but I also think it goes back to that internal piece, right? There's a conversation that really can happen separate and apart from the work itself. And I can tell you in our recruiting efforts, I mean, our recruiting, there isn't one person that we are interviewing, even in our transactional space, that now isn't talking about the pro bono work that we're doing. Our M&A guys are even always like giving me a hard time. Like, I can't have an interview without somebody mentioning, you know, what we're doing in the pro bono space. So I think the work, when we do it with intention it helps internally with conversations, and I think it'll have a greater impact on the community that truly needs it most.
And I think, Janay, you've brought that same intentional focus to the minority business space with the creation of a new project, which has done some great work. So could you talk to us a little bit about the Business Empowerment Center?
Sure. So in 2020, the fall of 2020, Vorys launched the Vorys Initiative for Business Empowerment. We shortened it to the VII program. And essentially, the program is in line with what Diane is explaining. It is a program designed to help minority-owned businesses with what we describe as a foundational legal project. That can vary depending upon where the business is at in its life cycle. But we bring these individuals and these business owners on as clients of the firm. They have access to the lawyers and the expertise that we have internally here, and it spans from just about everything in the firm except for litigation. And we were intentional about making that program. The qualification is you must be 51, the business must be 51% minority owned for all of the reasons that Diane stated. There would be a number of good reasons to expand the program to others who might have faced difficulties and things of that nature in their own experiences. But when the program was created, it was designed to help racial and ethnic minorities. And we've been able to bring on about 70 to 75 clients so far to the firm. And we've probably touched an additional roughly 100 or so businesses, either through just meet and greets, having an opportunity to maybe get them connected to another service in the community that's better suited for where they were at in the life cycle of their business. And then through some additional programming, similar to what Michael has talked about, we've been able to partner with the Urban League here in Columbus and the Urban Leagues in many other cities around Ohio in particular to do a lot of the programming and the educational piece to hopefully just fill in that gap where someone might already have knowledge that others don't have access to. And so we've really got kind of a full team here at the law firm that's really contributing to this project. And I think we go back again, Diane, to that retention piece. The lawyers that are participating want to do pro bono work, and they're likely to stay in an environment where they can be both have the career that they want and do the work that they want to do. And so I think we're seeing benefits across both in our communities and within the law firm itself.
And it's hard for me as a legal aid lawyer not to think about the tremendous impact that has on those 70 to 75 businesses. And so I don't know if you have an example of one that you would be willing to share with the group.
Sure. We actually just shared an article from our intellectual property folks here at the law firm that Trademark Work is a big hit for the businesses that are coming in through this program. And so they actually just released an article about two of our businesses. So I feel comfortable sharing them here publicly, which is a business called Power Women. They make high fashion women's blazers with pockets on the inside of the blazer, which for all, folks who might be interested in that attire, that sparks some interest there because most women's blazers do not have that in the inner lining. We were able to help them essentially put together contracts with local female artists to design the inner linings of their blazers. So they're all art inspired on the inside and then decorative on the outside. A really great company, great group of folks to work with. And they're now selling their product both online and in soon to be in many stores. There's also just one more I want to mention for the Columbus folks here on the call. Way Down Yonder Beignets and Coffee Shop. They just opened within the last couple of weeks here in Columbus, New Orleans inspired cuisine, particularly focusing on the beignets. And we were able to help them kind of get some of their paperwork and documents in order, and they're off to a great start. And hopefully, maybe some of you now will check them out and go to give it a taste.
Those are wonderful, and the blazers, brilliant idea. Michael, let's turn it over to you maybe to talk some more about the external work. I know you talked some about education, but I know there's also been some reentry and expungement work that you all have done, which is an area that we haven't talked about yet.
Sure, Kate, thanks again. One job that I have, I recently became the pro bono chair for the firm. So the one job that I have is trying to make sure that I can corral all the work that's being done throughout the 20 offices in the firm and try to get everybody knowledgeable about that so that some offices that want to duplicate what's going on in other offices can learn from that. But, we have offices that have expungement programs going on already, at least 2 or 3 offices, and trying to share that with others. We have a number of offices that have participated with the DC Compassionate Release Program. We have some lawyers in different offices focusing in on Washington with Innocence Project type matters. We got a whole bunch of lawyers that partner with different organizations around the country in our offices, where they're dealing with everything from challenging state regs in terms of low interest housing loans and that have the look and walk of predatory lending. Just a lot going on. And I'm trying to make sure that everybody is in a place so that they can find out what folks are doing. Our South Bend office has had a very successful expungement program. They just shared that with us in DC. We're embarking on that with that group that I talked about earlier that we gave the money to. And they want us to help them build that program. The difficulty is, of course, we're dealing with DC, Maryland, and Virginia, all of which are different. He was just dealing with a small county in Indiana. But we're going to duplicate it. We're going to make it work. So, we're doing a lot of different things. Again, just making sure that people know what's going on. A lot of interest with the Black-owned businesses around the IP space in the firm. They've asked us to duplicate that at least one more time, which will be happening in May. We did a webinar on how to reopen after COVID, which was widely attended with some of the labor and employment issues that came along with that. So again, what I'm trying to do is inspire people to be involved, but then share it so that we can duplicate it and make it better. And I'm also writing a lot of notes from this program because I'm getting a lot of good intelligence from you folks. So I have no shame in stealing good ideas. So, I hope that answers your question. But again, we have a lot going on. We have affinity groups inside the firm that contribute information to what's going on. The Black-owned business program was a marriage between the DEI committee, BT Black, which is an affinity group, or which we call a talent resource group, and the pro bono group. And what I learned after that was that the Racial Justice Committee external was themselves embarking on such a program, and I had to make sure that they didn't duplicate it because one didn't know what the other was doing, and I just heard about it in an offhand conversation. So I say all that to say there's a lot going on at Barnes, and my job is to keep it in one place so that we don't reinvent the wheel and get better at it.
That's great. Thank you, Michael.
Kate, if I could dovetail on what Michael said, and this is for the general audience. Expungement work is one of those spaces where, I know we kind of get a one-off, like maybe legal aid will reach out with an expungement or we'll know someone that needs one. I think one thing firms should be doing is what we at Ice Miller have done with the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. And Michael, I say this to you because you have a number of offices and you could create a relationship with the prosecutor's office in any one of those cities. But I think I even saw Kristen Bryan on here earlier from the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. But I reached out to the diversion unit there because, as many of you might know, when individuals are charged with certain felony offenses, they are screened and determined to be diversion eligible, which means that if for a year period of time they do a certain number of things and don't pick up any same or similar offenses, that their charge goes away. Well, the problem with the diversion programs in every single county, certainly in Ohio, is that you complete diversion and then it's actually the charge is still on your record. So the diversion programs themselves don't have the internal mechanism to expunge the records. And this was something that I felt pretty passionately about for any number of years. And so last year, for the first time, I reached out when Gary Tyak took office. We partnered with the diversion unit there. We did a look back period of 6 years. And every single person that graduated from diversion, we filed expungement for them, contacted them, wrote the applications on their behalf, did hearings where they were scheduled. And I think we're over like 500 now that have had their records expunged. And just think about that impact, right? That these individuals had done everything that they needed to do, but still had this on their record, which could have been an impediment for employment, housing, any number of things. And truly, they either didn't know it was there or didn't have the means to take it off their record. So I suggest that to everyone on the phone. Or everyone on this webinar. It's quite easy. I think we should be reaching out and creating those relationships. And I think it will be true in other counties what it is in Franklin County is, the diversion unit would be helpful and would be thankful for the help. It's been wildly successful in our firm, but just an idea I thought I would say to Michael on the heels of him taking over.
It's very helpful, Diane, and as a novice in this space, that could easily be overlooked. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Definitely an area of high need. We at Legal Aid see a regular flow of record sealing cases, but there is a lot of work in that area. And so any other opportunities to have partnerships and get people involved really does have a big impact on each of those individuals. Before I throw out sort of a broader question to the group, Yaz, I want to give you a little bit to talk about some of your work. It's different. I think it shows some of the range of work that can be done in this area. And so talk to us a little bit about the child custody work.
Sure. And before I get there, if I may, Kate, real quick, it was a perfect segue on the expungement discussion. Our firm just engaged with the Louisville Urban League for a 2022 expungement project. And that involves obviously the legal work involved to assist individuals looking to get their records expunged, but also has an educational component to it as well, so that process can continue on and on. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it is that work is very important. It goes back to some of the systematic issues that some of these folks face and the snowball effect of what a record could do to somebody. Yeah, so my first delve into some of our pro bono efforts related to international child abduction cases, and under the Hague Convention, there's an international child abduction process where essentially we are tasked with on a pro bono basis assisting non-United States citizens, non-Americans from all over the world in getting their children back who have been taken by a family member, an ex-spouse, or in a familial situation, brought to the United States either against the will of the child or against the will of the parent or family member, and cannot find representation in the United States for a number of reasons: cost, distance, language barriers, et cetera. And so we've partnered with United States Department to assist these families, again, from all over the world in these cases, which are filed and litigated in federal court. It's challenging and emotional work, and I don't know that I can do it on a day in and day out basis when you deal with these issues, but it's important for a lot of these underserved and underprivileged folks that otherwise could not get the legal support that they wanted. So, and that's something that the firm's been doing across its footprint for some time. One of our partners in our Lexington, Kentucky office, I learned the history of it. His father was a probate and family judge in Kentucky for a long time, and that's always what he thought he wanted to do, and had a tremendous passion for it. The work that he does now is quite different than that, but he carried that passion on and got the firm involved in this initiative, and we continue to help these non-American citizens with their family issues.
Thanks, yes. So for anyone in the panel, I love hearing about all of these projects, and I would love to see them all grow and flourish and be added to. So what recommendations or ideas, what has worked in terms of getting people involved, keeping people involved? I know we've talked about retention, but what suggestions and ideas do you have about how we continue to engage other attorneys in this work and really grow that pro bono field?
I could start real quick, then turn it over to the rest, because I know Noelle Shepard, our Columbus office member in charge, is here. And I think one really important aspect is to get buy-in and participation from the staff and attorneys at the law firm and at the office level. And that starts with good leadership at the top. When we have our, as I spoke earlier, our LLI students, Law and Leadership Institute students come through, when we have some of these other initiatives, Noelle finds and seeks young associates out and junior associates out to take ownership of these projects, to take ownership of this, of our initiatives, and run with it. And at a someone early in their career, given that responsibility and given that authority and given this project, really inspires others to want to participate. And on the back end, it's incentivized through some of our pro bono and what we identify as investment time requirements at the firm level. And so this is all considered by the firm. It's reviewed by the firm. And it's recommended and incentivized at a young age. So having that buy-in at the outset of your employment with the firm and in the office really helps buy-in throughout.
Others want to jump in?
Sure, I'll go ahead and jump in. I think one thing that I found to be incredibly important to the VIBE program specifically is when I made the ask of the firm to commit in this way, it was somewhat of a non-negotiable that the time that the lawyers spent providing the services was billable time. So for the lawyers on the call that work in large law firms, that is how we are essentially judged at all levels of our career, at least in part. And so it was really important, if I was going to go to young associates in particular and ask them to volunteer their time, that they received credit for that time. So it wasn't eating into what they viewed to be the money-making work. And so that might not be the best way to put it, but I think it is incredibly important that people get recognized for the work that they are doing, even if they are doing it from a good place, just because the system in which we all operate is a numbers-driven system. And so all of the client-based work that comes in through the VIBE program is billable time. There are opportunities for non-billable things like doing conferences or doing presentations. That is not billable in the traditional sense, but the work that is being done for the client is. And I've had a number of folks say it makes it so much easier for me to contribute to that time, because no one is then monitoring, well, how much am I spending here? How much am I spending on this? It's the same. It looks the same as any hour that is spent on a large business that comes in and is generating, significant dollar value for the firm. So that has been important, at least to get the VIE program off the ground, and I think to continue to see the success.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. We offer 100 hours annually for pro bono work that's counted as billable. During COVID, I advocated for an increase to 200, and for 2 years we had 200 pro bono hours that were counted as billable. I think, and I don't think it's gross to say, it's just the world we live in, right, Janay? It's we're good with incentives, and also we understand how compensation is structured in law firms, and so what a win we as firms can achieve if we're able to acknowledge and value pro bono work equivalent to pro bono work by doing something as simple as saying you do pro bono work and it counts just the same as your 550, your 600, or whatever is an hour. I would also just say that I think as firms, and I fault myself for this, like lawyers kind of think they know best, and we think we know best in terms of what the needs of our community are. And I think we should be having more external conversation with community partners that we don't know, and talking to them about what do you need, how we can help. Maybe sometimes we can help, but I will just tell you that I set up a whole lot of meetings and ask, what do you need? How can we help? And I include associates in those meetings. And because I want our lawyers to hear about the needs of the community, and for us all with intention to start thinking about how can we use our licenses, right, and our ability and our fortune and our privilege to help others that are less so. So I do think we need to, and this is for all of us, really start leaning out externally and figuring out what the community needs are and being creative in terms of how we can meet those needs. And I think even Janay was talking about with her program, which, by the way, Janay, I just love it. It's amazing. Keep crushing it.
Yeah.
If a business, if you can't service a business in some way, a person of color that is starting a new business, you can partner them with someone else that can help. And that's the beauty of having these conversations with, community organizations, is if they need something and we at Ice Miller can help them, odds are that if there's 6 of us participating in the conversation, that one of us is going to know where we can connect and to go get that help. And then we can actually make that introduction and facilitate a relationship that will get them to where they need to be. So Kate, I would say that's the other thing to think about, is us having more conversations and figuring out what the needs are versus us thinking that we know what our community needs most.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful comment. And, we have worked on that internally at Legal Aid as well. And, what are we doing to listen to the needs of the community instead of assuming that we know or that we have those solutions. And it does take some creativity and thinking about, this is what I'm hearing. Is there a way that I can use my legal skills to address it, whether it's transportation or some of the things that might fall outside of those lines? And I think that's why it's wonderful to hear some of these projects like Janay's project and the work that you're doing, Diane and Yaz, because they are all different, and making sure that we're linking the work that we're developing with the needs of the communities is so, so important. So thank you for saying that. I think we're getting close to time, but I understand that we have one more question maybe from Bill Nolan to start to close us out. So Bill, I will pass it over to you.
All right, thanks Kate, and thanks all the panelists and attendees. It's always good to hear what other people are doing. I think, and one of the great things about Columbus is I do think it's a city where people work together really well. And Janay mentioned the Urban League. I had a note to mention them, but she already did. I know Columbus Chamber is partnering with them, promoting Black-owned businesses, and there's obviously tons to do, but there's such a great foundation. So I would just ask the panelists, for attendees, what is, and it can be something we've already heard about, or something we haven't, just something, if somebody's here, they're listening, they're interested in getting involved, what's sort of one thing you would suggest they can do, and particularly because most of us are sort of big firm people, particularly people who don't necessarily have the infrastructure, the resources that big firms have, where sometimes this is kind of teed up for you. So would welcome sort of a takeaway idea for attendees who want to get involved.
Well, reach out.
To who?
Yeah, to any organization or I really even mean, reach out to me. And I also think just with the panelists, we should reach out to one another more. Michael, I don't know you. I'm fortunate to know Janay. Yes, I don't know you. I just feel like we as firms, right, could collaborate more, and the more we work together, the more impact we can have. But I do think pro bono directors at law firms, while they're part of firms, they're really an external resource. So people can certainly reach out to me. In fact, I probably get between 5 and 10 emails a day from random individuals that say, hey, I need help with this pro bono something. Reach out in that way. And then I think the same is true. Reach out if somebody wants to help and doesn't know where to start. I think pro bono directors or those that do pro bono work know where the need is, and hopefully we can direct you in the right direction. And then of course there's legal aid and a number. I saw Diana Parker on here. There's a number of local organizations that are doing great work that can always use a hand for sure.
Another way to reach out is if you're involved with community organizations that are involved with law firms that are doing pro bono work. Talk to them about it. I know someone mentioned earlier the Urban League, partnering with them and Chamber of Commerce, things of that nature. I just echo what Diane says. It's all about communication. We don't all know what's going on in the community. And the community, of course, knows even less about what we're doing. And I totally agree that us collaborating and learning from one another is a very important way to get this done. We were absolutely surprised when we did the survey to our people who attended our webinar, Black-owned businesses, that they came back with and identified 18 areas of law that they wanted to hear about. We didn't expect that kind of response. So when you communicate, you never know what you're going to get. And we were very happy about that. We're happy to drill down and provide opportunities for them, maybe not always in the form of a webinar, but a one-on-one contact or a referral or something of that nature. But we're definitely not going to drop the ball on that.
Janay and Yaz, what would you add to that?
I think I would echo what's been said. I think collaboration, one thing I really admire about the project that Diane has launched there at Ice Miller, the Judicial Release Coalition, is that it is a large number of firms all kind of doing the same work, which allows for a greater impact. Although it sits, with her and she kind of leads the effort, she's able to get more done, I think, if I can speak for her in this way, because there is collaboration amongst many different lawyers at many different law firms. And so I think the more we can do that and have less of a need to just have things as our own, I think that we will see an ability to give back more. I get a number of, just since launching the VII program, a number of reach outs for, hey, can you present here? Can you present here? Can you do a seminar at this location or with this business incubator? And not all the time can I do them on the schedule that the organizations are reaching out for. And I've used a lot of my teammates here at Vorys, but that would be an easy opportunity to collaborate with other folks in the community interested in this work to get out and have a greater impact. So I think just communicating and collaboration would go a long way to making a greater impact.
Could not agree more with all of that. The one tidbit that I would add is to utilize the resources that are currently available in terms of some of the legal aid organizations. I saw a note here, the Ohio State Legal Services Association, and some of those other organizations that are dedicated to a lot of the work that has been discussed today, day in and day out. Getting involved through those organizations or using the knowledge and resources that those organizations can provide, and the network that they have is certainly another thing I would encourage.
Well, thank you all. I think we still have a few minutes. I'll turn it over to Katie. I don't know, there's some questions in the chat. I don't know if we want to do that or if we want to close things up. So I'll pass it over to you and you can tell us where to go next.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, panelists, for such a great conversation. I really enjoyed listening and I learned a lot. And thanks to our sponsors, Barnes and Thornburg and Frost Brown Todd. I've loved this conversation. Join us again in July for the next Diverse Leaders in Law, and have a great day.